All right, Rabbi, good morning. Let's begin. A lot to do today. Today's daf is Kuf Ches. You can feel the excitement in the air. Mamish, only a couple of blot away from finishing this incredible Masechta. So today's shir is dedicated by Semei Malka Esterson in commemoration of the yahrzeits of their parents, Ludwig Stiefel, Yitzchak, Leib Ben Aaron Cohen, and Hinda Esterson, Hinda Bas Hana Chafraim. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshamas will have an aliyah and the families ein nechama. So we're picking up 107b, 3 lines up from the bottom. So if you remember again, we discussed in yesterday's daf the idea that in the Beis Hamikdash there were a total of 13 shofros. These collection boxes, they would call them shofros. I will say, but again, so 7 of them we identified to be used for specific needs. 6 of them do not seem to be clear as to what they are being used for. So if you remember again, we're trying to figure out what were the additional 6 being used for. So Z'iri said, Keneged, so we had a couple of interpretations yesterday. One said Keneged, the corresponding to the 6 Batei Avos of Kohanim, that they should have shalom with one another. Rabbi Yochanan said we had 6 pushkas. Why? So that the money should not corrode or get erased. The images should not get erased. Z'iri Amar Keneged Par Ve'egel, Ayol V'keves Gedi Usir. So Z'iri said, Rabbi said, that's what? Remember again, you had 1 box corresponding to each different type of animal offering. Rashi says over here, so Shamisnadev Parli Ola, maybe even in the Shover. So we'll say essentially, these are just all the different types of animals that one could potentially go ahead and bring as a carbon nadava. So one corresponding to the par, to the egel, to the ayil, to the keves, to the gedi, to the seer. Find Verebihi, Da'amar Katan Vehevi Gadol Yatz. And we'll say this reflective view of Rabbi, who says that what? That if you're misnadev, if you pledge to give a small animal, but instead you give a large animal, that such a nidava is not sufficient. Remember again, Rabbi holds that halacha l'maisa, you have to give that which you pledged. So because of that, halacha l'maisa, they had a separate nedava box for each type of animal. Bar Pada says, Kineged parim v'ha'ilim tap of kovches hakvasim v'hasi'irim v'hamosaros v'hamol. Supposed to listen to this. So Bar Pada says that one of the boxes is for the parim. So Rashi points out over here that the parim, Rabbi say, ultimately again are shel chatos tzibor. This refers to communal sin offerings. That if they ended up setting aside a communal sin offering and halacha l'maisa it was lost, they brought a replacement one. They then found the original one. So the replacement one is allowed to grace till develop some mum. Then it's sold off. Those monies would be placed in one of these receptacles. The Eilim, Rashi says, are the Asham Gzelos, Asham Mi'ilos. Same idea. That were set aside, lost. Replacement animals were designated. Original animal is found. Replacement animal is allowed to graze till develops a mum. Sold off. Money deposited in this pushka. Kvasim, top of Kufchas, Rashi says, is Asham Nazir, Asham Metzora. Seiri are Seiri Chatos, Shal Tzibor, Shal Regalim. Ultimately, again, communal sin offerings, or the sin offerings of the Yamim Tovim. Mosaros, Rashi says, is Kego Misha Makriv Echad Mikolelu, Vehifrish Mos L'Shem Kach, Vehuzlu Behemos. So we'll say, this would be an interesting case of, let's say, where I set aside money to purchase any one of these aforementioned animals. And what happens? The price of animals goes down. So now I set aside $100. It turns out that what? I can go ahead and get an animal for $50. What do I do with the extra $50? You can't put it back in your pocket. Why? Because Lamaisi already designated it. So where does it go? It goes into one of these pushkas. V'ha-ma'a. Both say this is actually very interesting. Ma'a, Rashi says over here, is kolbon. Both say, is this not familiar? This is back to our shkalim days. What's kolbon, Rashi says? He says, kolbon shekol yachin maybe machzis ha-shekel ba'achra ba'adar. V'im nasnu bein shneim shekel. Nosnin, shekel shalim. Nosnin kolbon echad ma kitana. Mipnei hachra shachshav lo nasnu bein shneim ela hechre echad. V'ilu hevim kimishpatan hayu sham shtechas. Listen to this. The halacha is, when you brought a machzis ha-shekel, Rabosai, so every Jew has to contribute a half shekel. Here's what's fascinating. We saw this detail in Shkalim. You actually bring a machzis ha-shekel plus a little. See, I will say, because coinage in the times of the Mishnah was actually like each coin was minted on its own, so there was always the concern that a coin wasn't exact. So in order to ensure that you are really giving a full half shekel to the Beis HaMikdash, you give an actual machzis shekel coin plus some small additional amount. So we'll say that's called the ma'ah. Where does this come up most? This comes up most ultimately, again, if you have two people who say, listen, we'll just give a shekel. You and I, right? Me, Reuven and Shimon say, you know what, together we'll give a shekel to the Beis HaMikdash. So you have to give what's called the ma'ah. A ma'ah means that additional amount to the Beis HaMikdash. So there's an extra pushka for that. So we'll say, so now we have all these different interpretations as to what the 6 additional shofros in the Beis HaMikdash were used for. Now the Gemara is going to analyze each of them. Kulu kechizkiya lo amri. So we'll say the other opinions will hold like Chizkiya. Remember, what did Chizkiya say? Why did we have 6? In order that the Kohanic families should not argue. Each Kohanic family has its own nidava pushka, from where they bring nidavos for the Beis HaMikdash. The meat is consumed, the hides are theirs. So the Gemara says, no one holds like Chizkiya. Why? Because it's actually so beautiful. Li'insuye lo chayshinan. Right? Kohanim don't fight. Kohanim don't fight, right? We don't assume that the Kohanim fight. Now, why not, Rabbi? Because remember again, each Beis Av, each family gets its own day in the Beis HaMikdash. So because each family gets its own day, they have their own karbanos, and therefore they're not going to fight. Okay, beautiful thought. So the Gemara says, so ultimately, again, they're not passing like Rabbi Yochanan. Why? Because they say we're not going to set aside 6 pushkas for nadava money because we're not concerned about rottage or spoilage or corrosion. Erosion? We're not worried about the money getting messed up, right? That's we're not worried about the money getting messed up. Good. So the Gemara says, Kizi'iri lo amri. They don't pass like Zi'iri. Why? Because you also remember Zi'iri's opinion only works according to Rabbi, who says that if a person pledged katan and brought a gadol, that is not yotze. So the Gemara says, Ki barpada nami lo amri. We'll say so they don't pass like barpada. The other opinions will hold like barpada either. Why not? So the Gemara says mosaros kulhu nami mosaros. Well, because in Barpada's model, you had one of the pushkas that was set aside for mosaros. We'll say, what does mosaros mean? Mosaros means extra funds. All of these pushkas are for extra funds. Says the Gemara, ma'anami l'shkalim azla. Furthermore, again, I will say, interesting enough, in Barpada's model, so Barpada has an extra ma'ah. Remember again, Barpada has an extra pushka, set aside for that ma'ah. What's the ma'ah again? The ma'ah represents the small additional payment that accompanied your machzis shekel. So in Barpada's model, there's a separate pushka that's set up for that ma'ah. But say everyone else holds that what? Where is that ma'ah deposited? It was deposited with the machzis shekel. There wasn't a separate pushka for that. That went into the machzis shekel pushka. Tisanya lehechan kalbon zeholech. Where does the Charbon say the kalbon is that additional payment that was given together with the machzis shekel? Where does that go? L'shkalim. Both say that goes in the same pushka as l'shkalim. Div Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Eliezer, Omer linadava. Rabbi Eliezer says that it goes to nadava. Ushmuel Omer, Shmuel says, kineged moser chatos umoser asham. Umoser asham nazir, umoser asham matzora, umoser minchas chote, Umosar asiris haifa shal kohen gadol. So we'll say, so says the Gemara, now comes along Shmuel, and Shmuel says that ultimately, again, these different pushkas are used, we'll say, for all of these different, remember again, we'll say, here's what we're going with. Aside for the, remember again, 2 groupings of pushkas. The first 7 pushkas out of these 13 were clearly marked and identified for a particular purpose. Remember again from our shkalim days, tiklin charatin, tiklin asikin, you had new shkalim, old shkalim. So the first 7 were clearly demarcated for different needs. The issue is you have these additional 6 which apparently were not clearly marked. So the shayla is, or not clearly, or at least not, I should say, their identity is subject to dispute. We know that there were 13 in total. First 7, we know the remaining 6 are subject to some doubts. So now you have Shmuel coming along and saying, oh, you know what it was used for? Mosar chatos, mosar asham. Rav Oshia Amar kineged mosar chatos, umosar asham, umosar asham nazir, umosar asham mitzora, umosar kinin, umosar minchas chote. So Rabbi Oshia understands that again. Rabbi say when we say the extra, what does it mean extra of these karbanos? So Rabbi say generally these cases are pretty much all the same, which is I'm designated a karban from for let's say. You could choose whatever you want. I'm designating a chatos. So I'll say, so then what? What happens? I go ahead, I designate the chatos. Animal gets lost. What do? I lose it. I designate another one. Okay, fine. It happens. I'm ready to offer up the second one. What happens, Rabbi say? Right? First one comes back. Which one do I offer? Number one. What do I do with number two? So generally, in most cases, what I end up doing is allow the animal to graze till it develops some mum, sell it off, and have the money. That money is still sacrificial money. What do I do with it? Beis HaMikdash. So we'll say that's when we see that the mosar, the extra, that's how these cases come up. So you see over here, Rabbi Oshia now and Shmuel having again 6 different pushkas, essentially set aside for these various monies. Shmuel, my time alo Amar Rabbi Oshia. Why does Shmuel not hold like Rabbi Oshia? To which the Gemara says, Kinin tana leresha. Because ultimately, again, he holds that Kinin, Rabbi Osai, the pushka for the extra money from bird offerings was part of the original 7. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Oshia, tani velo tani Kinin, vatani Rabbi Oshia v'tani Kinin. So we'll say, Rabbi Oshia also has Kinin in the first 7. So what's happening over here? Chad lekinin, v'chad lemosar Kinin. Says the Gemara, one is for Kinin and one is for Mosar Kinin. So we'll say apparently there was in Rabbi Oshia's model there was one pushka that was set aside for the actual bird offerings. I guess if someone needed bird offerings, and the second one was for additional monies from bird offerings. Rabbi Oshia, my time of Amar Shmuel. Why did Rabbi Oshia not hold like Shmuel? Savar lakiman do Amar Mosar shalasiris ha'efa shal kohen gadol yarkar. Rabbi Oshia is actually very interesting. So Rabbi Oshia, remember again in Shmuel's model, Rabbi Oshia, one of the pushkas was set aside for additional funds generated from the Asiris Haifa. Remember our Asiris Haifa days? Those were good days in Menachos, Asiris Haifa. Let's remember again, Asiris Haifa was brought twice. When was it brought? Every single Kohen on the day that he was inaugurated into the Kuna brought an Asiris Haifa. The Kohen Gadol brought it when? Every single day. But remember again, it was divided up into 2 parts. Half was offered up in the morning, half was offered up in the afternoon. In Rav Oshia's model, in Shmuel's model, Shmuel has one of the 6 pushkas, one of the 6 grouping, one of the 6 was set aside for additional monies generated from the Asiris Haifa of the Kohen Gadol. We'll say, how would you have additional money set aside for the Asiris Haifa? How would that happen? Simple case is, I set aside $100 to go ahead and purchase the flour and the oil and everything else. And what happens? The price goes down. So now I have additional funds. Those funds are still consecrated. So where do they go? So at least according to Shmuel, ultimately, again, they would go into one of these pushkas marked for additional funds for the Asir Saifa. So why does Rabbi Oshia not hold like Shmuel? Because interestingly enough, Rabbi Oshia holds that anything that is left over from the Asir Saifa, Yirkov, is left to rot. Mosar minchas nedava, so Mosar mincha Yirkov. So let's listen to this. As the Brisa says, if you look at Rashi, okay, not yet. Fine, we'll see. So Gemara says, this anya, Mosar minchas nedava, Mosar mincha Yirkov. Supposed to say, literally translated, the leftover of a minchas nedava, or the leftover of a mincha is left to rat. My kamar, what does this mean to say? This is what it means to say. Mosar minchas chote nedava. Ultimately, I'll say the leftover of a minchas chote. Remember again, what's a minchas chote? For certain types of infractions, so ultimately, again, if a person is poor, they could bring a mincha offering as a sin offering. So Mosar minchas chote nedava, any leftover funds, right? Any leftover funds from a minchas chote go towards nedava. Mosar asiris haifa shal kohen gadol Yirkov. But we'll say anything left over from the Asira Seifa of the Kohen Gadol is left to rat. In other words, we'll say you're not using it for anything else. Rashi says over here, look at Rashi. So if you look at Rashi, about 6 lines up from the bottom. Minchas chote, shar l'shem chol v'hifresh. So remember again, those monies are separated ultimately again for obligatory offerings. The dava, the shofros, so any leftover monies goes into the pushka. Mosar lachmei toda. I'm sorry, that's not we're not up to that yet. Rabbi says, Afilu Moser Asiris Haifa Shal Kohen Gadol Nami Nedava. So Rabbi says, even the leftover funds from the Asiris Haifa of the Kohen Gadol also go into the Nedava Pushka. Ella Moser Lachmei Toda Yirkov. Anything left over from the funds used to purchase lachmei toda, that is left to rat. Look at Rashi. Moser lachmei toda yirkov, de lav chatas ikru, unidavas yochid nami karvi. De bifnei atzmo I efshar lakrivo, shalom atzinu lechem karav bifnei atzmo. Vim toda acheres I efshar lakrivo, sharein toda kreva below lachma. So we'll say, remember again, in this case, they're literally talking about the leftover loaves. Right? If there are actually leftover loaves from the toda, there is nothing to do with those loaves. They cannot be repurposed for another karban, and therefore they are left to rat. So the Gemara says, Beplukta. In reality, this is subject to dispute. Most asira sefer shel kohen gadol. So we'll say if you have leftover, literally leftover from the asira sefer of the kohen gadol, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Nidav. Rabbi Yochanan says that it can be sold off, and the money is used. So we'll say again. Remember this case over here. Now we're not just talking about leftover money. We're actually talking about leftover item, leftover product. Right? There's leftover from the asira sefer of the kohen gadol. So what do you do with it? Says the Gemara. Rabbi Yochanan says Nidav. You could sell it off, and the money is ultimately again go towards Nadava. Rabbi Elazar Amar Yerka. Rabbi Elazar says that it is left to rat. Meisvei, the Gemara is the kasha for we'll say first wide line Kuf Ches Amud Aleph. Meisvei Moser Shkalim Chulin. The leftover of Shkalim ultimately again is Chulin. I will say if you look at Rashi, Rashi says Moser Shkalim Hechnis Maos Merubin LeShkalim V'Shaklan V'Nisostru Mehen. There's leftover from the Shkalim collection. So what's the halacha? Chulin. Umoser asiris haifa, and I will say anything that is left over from the kohen gadol's asiris haifa. Umoser kine zovin, vikine zavos, vikine yoldos, and any of the leftover from the bird offerings of zavin, zavos, yoldos, vichatos va'ashamos, and chatos and asham, mosrehen nidava. Their leftovers, i.e. the monies generated from their leftovers, are put into the nidava pushka. My love, Moser Asiris Ha'efa Shal Kohen Gadol. We'll say, are we not referring to over here even the leftover of the Asiris Ha'efa of the Kohen Gadol? So it shows you over here that what? That the leftovers of the Asiris Ha'efa of the Kohen Gadol are sold, and ultimately the money is deposited for Nedava. Lo, Moser Minchas Chote. No, it's not referring to the Moser of the Asiris Ha'efa, rather it's referring to the leftover of the Minchas Chote. Amrav Nachman by Yitzchok, Mistabra Kimandamar, Moser Asiris Ha'efa Shal Kohen Gadol Yirkov. We'll say it appears clear that we don't do anything with the leftovers of the Kohen Gadol's Asiris Ha'efa, and rather it is just simply left to rat. Disanya, because we learned Lo Yasim Aleh Shemen, V'lo Yitin Aleh Levona Ki Chatasi. We'll say this is by the Minchas Chote. If you're bringing a mincha as a chatas offering, so the pasuk says, you shall not place oil on it, nor shall you place levona on it. Why? Because it is a chatas. Rabbi Yehuda. He kuriya chatos, ve'in acheres kuriya chatos. Well, this is actually very important. This minchas chote is called a chatos, but other menachos are not called a chatos. Okay, meaning what? Limeid ala siris ha'efa shal kohen gadol, she'ina kuriya chatos. But so what this tells us is that it is only a minchas chote that is called a chatos. Other menachos are not called chatas offering. What's an example of another mincha? The asira sa'if of the kohen gadol, which is offered up every single day, is not called the chatas. Because it's not called the chatas, therefore, utuuna levona. Therefore, we'll say it requires oil and it requires levona. Umideina kuriya chatas, and because it's not called the chatas, mosra yirkov. Ultimately, again, its leftovers are left to rat. We'll say, take a look at the Rashi for just a moment. Ve'ina cheres, 4 lines up from the bottom, last 2 words on line in Rashi. Ve'ina cheres, va'afa pishi chova, Eina kriya chatos, shehela din chatos, shlo yitan levona. Umida legabe levona less la din chatos, legabe mosam less la din chatos. Listen to this. The concept ultimately, again, of leftover monies being set aside for nedava really comes from where? Really comes from the concept of chatos. So the fact that ultimately, again, the minchas, the asiris haifa of the Kohen Gadol is not called the chatos. How do we know it's not called the chatos? So that's evidenced by the fact that the Torah only calls the minchas choti a chatos. Furthermore, again, if you're a chatos, you don't get levona. The asiris haifa of the Kohen Gadol does get levona. It's not a chatos. So because it's not categorized as a chatos, therefore what? Its leftover monies are not used for nedava. So what do you do? Halacha l'maisa with the leftovers of the asiris haifa of the Kohen Gadol. What do you do with it? Nirkav, it's left to rot. And we'll say, and that indeed is how the Rama paskins, that is halacha l'maisa. Anything left over from the asira seifa of the Kohen Gadol is not sold with the proceeds going to Nedava, but rather is simply left to rot. Good. Says the Mishnah. Shar zeh, let's listen to this. So still continuing along this same theme. Shar zeh ola. We'll say, listen to this case. Interestingly enough, so I go ahead and I say, this shar should be an ola. Right? This shar should be an ola. Okay, so we'll say, so what happens? Vinistaiv, it gets a mum. It gets a mum. So what's the halacha? Imratza yavi bedamav shnayim. So we'll say, now watch this. So we'll say, so actually, this is a very important case. Let me tell you the case, and I'll explain the logic. It really is very fascinating. So I say, this shar should be an ola. Then it gets a mum. So we'll say, so what do? I sell it off. If I want to use the money to go ahead and what? Bring 2 shvarim, let's say in the interim, the price of oxen went down. So now I want to bring 2 oxen for that money. I am permitted to do so. And I will say, now this is unique. Why is this unique? Because halacha l'maisa, right? We just saw in the previous Mishnah that generally not allowed to do stuff like this, right? Even something as simple as if I go ahead and I say I'm going to bring a small animal and I decide I'm going to bring a large animal, at least according to Rabbi, that you can't even do that. So here it's interesting to note that I pledged an animal and yet halacha l'maisa, I'm going to be able to use the money to purchase 2 animals. We'll discuss why. Shnei shvarim elu ola. Similarly, again, I'll say if I pledge 2 animals as an ola, these 2 animals are an ola, v'nistavu, and then they develop a mum, ratza yavi b'dmein echad. But I'll say after it develops a mum, then I'm going to sell it off, use the proceeds to bring another carbon. If I want to, I could bring 1 animal. I could bring one, grade A animal instead of 2 animals for the same price. The Rabbi Oser, and I'm both saying all of these cases, Rabbi says that it is Oser. Now, we'll say, look at Asher just a moment. Rabbi Oser, l'chatchila, avalim heavy yatsa, d'chevan da'amar zeh in l'chay b'ach yusuf. We'll say, Rabbi says, l'chatchila, we'd rather you not do this, but b'di'evet it works. And we'll say, now why does this work? This is actually very important. Because halacha l'maisa, we're going to see something I'm going to tell it to you now. Because halacha l'maisa, if you say shar ze ola, this shar is an ola, and it develops a mun rabosai, what is my obligation going forward? None. Why? Because I pledged this animal. If this animal is no longer offerable, right, is no longer sacrificable, I have no obligation to provide a substitute animal. This is as opposed to what rabosai, if I said Hare alai. If I say I have an obligation, then I have an obligation. If this one develops, I have to bring another animal. If I said shar zeh, that means again the obligation devolved upon that animal. If that animal develops a mum, I'm actually freed from obligation. That's why technically, if I decide to sell it off and use the funds to purchase another sacrificial animal, if I want to purchase 2, I want to purchase 3, I want to purchase 10, I want to purchase 1, it doesn't make a difference. Why? Because technically speaking, I am freed from my obligation. So Rabbi says l'chatchila, we don't want you to do this because you may get confused with the cases in the previous Mishnah, but b'di'evet, if you do it, it works. Similarly, ayos olav and istaiv. If a person says, I hereby declare that this ayil will be an ola, he says inside the v'nistaiv, it gets a mum. Imratza yavi b'dam of keves. So we'll say if he wants, he could use the money to buy a sheep. So we'll say here what's happening in this case. In this case over here, he's switching the type of animal. Keves ze ola v'nistaiv imratza yavi b'damav. Ultimately, again, if he says this sheep will be a carbon, and then it develops a mum, and he wants to go ahead and what? Bring an ayil, bring a ram, so he can do so. We'll say same logic. Once it develops a mum, he's free from obligation, but Rabbi Oser. But Rabbi says still you shouldn't do it. Amud Beis. I'vaha Amrit Reisha, but we learned in the Reisha, meaning in the previous Mishnah, what? We learned in the previous Mishnah, Shar b'mana v'hevi shnayim b'mana lo yotza, Shar zeh v'nistayv shainis. Well, it's actually just what we said before. But we learned in the previous Mishnah that what? That halacha l'maisa. If I go ahead and I say I'm bringing a shar worth of mana, and then I decide, you know what, to go ahead and develop, let's something happens, and it goes ahead and I decide to bring, I sell it off and I bring 2 shvarim for the same amount, that halacha l'maisa, again, it does not work. I'm not yotzi, even according to the Rabbanon. Yet this Mishnah says that if shar develops a mum, I can go ahead and bring 2 for the price of 1. Shar zeh v'nistaiv shani. I both say this case is different. Why? Because again, I'm saying shar zeh. Both remember again a very important distinction. Once I say shar zeh, the entire obligation devolves upon this animal, which means that once this animal develops a mum, then what, Rabbi say? Then what? Technically speaking, I am freed from any obligation, which means if I want to pack up and go home, I'm done. Therefore, if I subsequently decide to sell off the animal, use the funds to purchase either a replacement animal or replacement animals, or for that matter, even a different type of animal, that is absolutely fine because I'm not even obligated to begin with. Shnei shvarim elu yola v'nistavu ratzi yavi b'dmei echav Rabbi Yosef. So we'll say, remember again, the Gemara says, let's say I pledged these 2 oxen should be an ola. Then they both develop a mum. If I want, I can sell it off and use the proceeds to buy 1 big shar. But Rabbi says it's asar. My taima. I will say ultimately, and why does Rabbi not like this? Mishum dahavile gadol vehevi katan. We'll say because Rabbi doesn't like this. Why? Because this is like a case where a person pledged to bring a large animal, but instead what? Instead what? Brought a small animal. So remember again, Rabbi doesn't, first of all, everyone happens to agree in that case that it doesn't work, right? Everyone agrees. Only the machlokes case is where you pledge a small animal and bring a large animal. The Rabbanan say that case is fine. Rabbi doesn't like that case. So we'll say, so the problem, so again, I want to be clear. When we say Rabbi says you can't do it, as Rashi already told us, what does it mean you can't do it? What does it mean you can't do it? L'chatchila, you shouldn't do it. But of course, Rabbi agrees with the principle that when you say shor zeh, or in this case, shvarim zu, right, these shvarim, shtei shvarim elu, ola, and then it develops a mum. So even Rabbi says, if you use the money to buy 1 big shor, it's okay. But Rabbi the Chatchila says, I don't like it. Why? Because halacha l'mais dahavile gadol vehevi katan, v'afagav, and I will say, even though this is a case where the shor developed a mum, and therefore even Rebbe agrees that if you said shvarim elu and they both develop a mum, I am freed from obligation. I did my part. The fact that the animal developed a mum are circumstances beyond my control, and therefore halacha l'maisa, I am not obligated anymore. So I could replace it with whatever I want. But nevertheless, l'chatchila lo shari Rebbe. Rebbe doesn't like this case l'chatchila. Else the concern that you may confuse it with other similar cases which Rebbe considers problematic. V'liflog nami bereisha. Why doesn't Rebbe? Rashi says, "V'liflog nami bereisha shar ze'olav and istaiv yomi bedam of shnaim davi katan vehevi gadol." Why doesn't Rebbe argue in the first case as well? To which the Gemara says, "You're right." Rebbe akulam mismilsa pligi. We'll say Rebbe really argues on the entire statement, on the entire case. V'nata lehul rabbanon ad demaskim el sayur. We'll say first wide line. But Rebbe was being polite. What is he doing polite? We'll say he was waiting to voice his argument until when? Until the rabbis finished speaking. Right? He was just waiting on to finish speaking. And then again, ultimately, then he argues. Teida diktani ayil ze'ola v'nistaiv. Both say the right to this is because the Mishnah says ayil ze'ola, that this ayil is an ola v'nistaiv and it develops a mum. Ratza yavi bedamav keves. Keves zeli ola v'nistaiv ratza yavi damav ba'ayil. Rebbe also. So you see over here, Rebbe didn't interject in the middle of every single case. Rather, what ends up happening is Rebbe allows the Rabbanon to voice their opinion in totality, and then after they finish speaking, then Rebbe goes ahead and voices his dissent. So listen to this. Mimina lemina mai. Look at Rashi just a moment. It's Rashi almost right across. Rashi's right across Magal Sabach. Lemina lemina mai. Shor ze olav v'nistaiv. Mao sheyavi bedamav shnei elam. So listen to this. So if a person says shor ze ola, this shor will be an ola. It develops a mum. Are you permitted now to go ahead and use the money to bring 2 rams? Why 2 rams? We'll say the Gemara is just assuming that an ox is more expensive than rams. So let's say, for argument's sake, I was going to bring a shar, it developed a mum, now I have the money, can I bring 2 rams with that money? So the Gemara says, Tashma, shar ze olav in istaiv, lo yavi b'dam avayil. Aval maybe b'dam of beis elim. Supposed to listen to this. Well, we have a price that seems to indicate that if I say this shar will be an ola and it develops a mum, I should not bring 1 ram with its money, but I could bring 2 rams with its money, right? And we'll say, now why shouldn't I bring 1 ram? So presumably because 1 ram is not going to use up all of the funds from the ox, but I can use 2 rams, which will use up all of the funds. Rabbi Oser, Rabbi says, Lefi she'ein bila. Because we'll say, Rabbi says there's a problem here. What's the problem? Lefi she'ein bila, Rashi says, Shetzarach lahavi imam shtei menachos b'shnei kelim. So we'll say, here's the problem. The problem is I had originally committed to bringing 1 carbon. 1 carbon. Now if I bring 2 elim, 2 rams, each ram gets its own mincha. Those menachos are not mixed with each other. So the problem is, I'm bringing now 2 different karbanos in the place of where 1 should have been. Therefore, Rabbi says I don't like it. To switch, the Gemara says, Shmamina. So we'll say, so first of all, leaving aside this whole discussion, what you clearly see is the answer to our question is that halacha l'maisa, yes, if you pledge an animal, right, shar zu ola, the shar develops a mum. The shar develops a mum. Then what Rabbi will say, I could choose to go ahead and use the monies to bring another type of animal from that. Okay. To which the Gemara says, I don't understand what we're talking about over here. Of course you could bring 2 different animals. Why Rabbi will say? If I say shar za'ola, the shar develops a mum. The Gemara says, well, can I go ahead and bring rams from this money instead of a shar? We'll say, what's the answer? Of course you can. Why? Because you're not obligated anymore. We'll say, we just got finished saying this. We just got finished saying that if you designate the particular animal as a carbon, shar zuola, and the shar develops a mum, we'll say, what's the extent of my liability? I'm done. The shar develops a mum. It's no longer good. If I choose to sell that animal off and use the money for purpose, I can bring whatever I want. So what's the shayla over here? My area tray, afilu chat nami. We'll say, it's not true. At the end of the day, if I said shar zu ola, the shar develops a mum, and I want to use the money to bring an aisle, I could bring an aisle, I could bring a pigeon, I could bring whatever I want because I'm no longer obligated. Chad nami done is. So ultimately, again, what's the return case that developed the mum? L'rabanan lo shanile bein gadol l'katan. To which the Gemara says, Trei tanoi vali b'drabanan. So I'll say, interestingly enough, the Gemara says it must be that there is a machlokes tanoim. Over here, look at Rashi. Trei tanoi diika desvir le afilu b'nestayv asri abanan begadol vehevi katan lechatchila. So I will say, so apparently again, what's at play over here is as follows. You're right. In the pure letter of the law, the halacha is that if the animal develops a mum, you're freed from obligation. But because what we are concerned about, the Bosai, is that if you go ahead and the animal, you pledged a shar, and you end up bringing, let's say, an aisle, we're concerned that you may come to confuse that case with what? We're in a case where a person pledges a behema gidola, right, and ends up bringing a katan. You may come to assume that that case is okay. In order to avoid that potential possibility, the Rabbanan said that if the shar develops a woman, you're going to bring another animal. You could bring a different species, but what? The value has to be the same as the original animal. So we'll say, so apparently there's a machlokes. Some say that is correct, some say that is not correct. Again, going back to what we saw before in Rabbi. So fundamental machlokes. Rabbi Yosef Lefi Shein Bila. So remember again, Rabbi said, I don't like this idea of you bringing 2 rams as a substitute, ultimately again, for the shar. Why? Because 2 rams comes with what? 2 menachos, and the 2 menachos cannot be combined into one. Taima dein bila. So the reason Rabbi doesn't like this is because you can't mix it together. Hayesh bila shari. But I'll say, but if you were to be able to mix them together, apparently Rabbi would say it would fine. Rabbi would say it would be fine. Ayva hatnan ayol ze ola v'nistaiv. If a person says this ayol is going to be an olah, and then it develops a mum. Ratsa yamvi b'damav keves. Right? If he wants, he could bring a sheep with the money. Keves ze'ola. Similarly, again, if he says this sheep is for an ola, vinistek. And I will say, what happens? It develops a mum. Yavi b'dam avayil. you can go ahead and use the money to purchase an ayil. The Rabbi Oser, and Rabbi says it is Aser, to which the Gemara says, you're right, Trei Tanoi Aliba de Rabbi. Both say there's a machlokes as to what the shita of Rabbi is. Ubitahorim, Egal, both say if you're dealing with an animal that's not a balmum, Ubitahorim, Egal vehevi par. Both say, if let's say again, you set aside, you said, I'm going to bring an Egal. Both say an Egal is a calf. And you decide instead to bring a cow, a par. Keves, the heavy ayil. I said I'm going to bring a sheep, and instead I bring a ram. Yatsa, ultimately again, I am Yotze. Both say, why? Whose opinion does this reflect? Stomach kirabanan. Because ultimately, again, both say, this will seem to reflect the view of the Rabbanan. Because both say, remember, again, one of the major points of contention in the Rabbanan and Rebbe is what? If you pledge to bring a small animal, and you end up bringing a large animal, what's the halacha? The Rabbanan say, fantastic, shkoyach, right? You increased your pledge. Rebbe will say, problem, right? Because at the end of the day, you need to go ahead and carry through on what you pledged. Even if it turns out you're bringing something more, that's not what you obligated to do. You obligated yourself to do. Ratza yavi b'dam of beis, Amarav Menachos bar Zvid, Amarav, lo shanu ela da amar shar ze ola. Aval amar, shar ze alai ola, but halacha l'maaseh, if what? If a person says shor ze alai, now say, now watch this. Now, this is actually a very interesting case here. Now say the Gemara says all these cases that we're talking about over here is where a person says shor ze ola. So we'll say the whole halacha of shor ze ola is this shor is an ola, which means that the entire extent of my obligation is anchored in what? In what? In this animal. So if something happens to this animal, then what's the nature of my liability? Done. Well, it's a very important halacha. So the animal gets maimed, the animal is stolen, the animal runs away, whatever it is, I'm done. I don't have any obligation of replacement. However, aval amar shar ze alai ola. Oh, Jose, but if I say this shar alai ola, once I say alai, then suddenly what? The obligation is on me. Once the obligation is on me, then the obligation transcends any one particular animal, and ultimately, again, is in existence until I satisfy the obligation. Then hukva. Then ultimately, we have an established obligation. Rashi says hukva achriyusa alav lahavi ola achas v'lo shtei olos. So we'll say, so halacha l'maisa again. If I say shar ze alai ola, then l'maisa again the halacha is I must bring either that shar or some type of exact replacement of that shar. Vidilma alai lahaviu ka'amar. I'll say maybe what he's saying is it's upon me to bring it. In other words, that I have the obligation to bring this animal, but I'm not actually coming along to establish an obligation upon myself. Ela iyit mar halki yitmar. This is what you have to say. Amar Menachos bar Zvid. Amar Rav. Lo shanu ela da amar shar ze ola. Both say the halachas in the Mishnah are dealing dafna with a case of where he said what? Shar ze ola. The obligation is in the shar. Inami amar shar ze alai ola. Or we'll say even if you said shar ze alai, right? See, I will say anytime you're saying what? What's the operative phrase here? Shar zeh. Shar zeh. Anytime you're saying shar zeh, even if you add in a lie, right, we understand that statement to mean what? The obligation is anchored in the animal itself. Or I should say the obligation devolves only upon that animal. So if something were to happen to that animal, my obligation is satisfied. Aval amar shar zeh v'domav alai. Oh, let's say if I say shar zeh, what does domav alai mean? Right? Its value is upon me, then hukva. Then ultimately, you're going to say halacha l'maisa. I have an ongoing obligation that transcends any one particular animal, and therefore, even if something were to happen to that animal, I would have an obligation ultimately again to satisfy my obligation with a like animal. That's the difference over here, with a like animal. So we'll say, and that is indeed codified halacha l'maisa. As long as I'm saying again, just shar zeh, or even shar zeh alai, my obligation is only upon the animal. Once I say v'damav alai, that the financial obligation is upon me, then halacha l'maisa will say I am obligated in a replacement, if the animal gets lost or maimed, in a replacement animal, in the same type of animal as well. Says the Mishnah. Weiter. Ha'omer echer mekiv se hegdish. Says the Gemara, "Ve'echa mishori hegdish." So let's listen to this. I hear different kind of case. I have a flock of sheep. Yeah, a flock, right? Good, chevra, right? I have a flock of sheep. So, I'm sorry. So he says, and I say, one of my sheep is hekdesh, or echad mishvarai hekdesh, or one of my oxen is hekdesh. So I will say, but what did I not do over here? I did not designate which one. V'hayulo shnayim, and I had two. What's the halacha? Hagadol shebehen hekdesh. Ultimately, again, the larger one is hekdesh. So I will say, again, an interesting case. So I have two, right? The larger one is hekdesh. Shlosha, what if I have three? Beinoni shebehen hekdesh. The middle one is hekdesh. I'm supposed to see this distinction. So again, I made one of them hekdesh, right? I did not articulate which one. If I only have two, it's the larger one. If I have three, it's the Benoni one, the middle one. Pirashti v'nei odea ma pirashti, shebrashti, o sha'amar li abba v'nei odea ma, or both say so. And then what? Second case, I said I know that I designated one, but what? I don't remember which one. Or my father told me on his deathbed. Rashi points out over here. My father told me from his deathbed that he had designated one of these animals as hekdesh, but I don't know which one. Hagadol sheben hekdesh. Ultimately, again, the larger one is hekdesh. Says the Gemara. Alma, what do you see from this? Makdish ba'ayin yafa makdish. Also, what you see from here is that when you consecrate an animal, when you makdish something, so we assume that people give generously to hekdesh. Therefore, in the case where I have two animals, and I said one of my animals is hekdesh, we assume which animal is it? The larger one. It's the larger one. So Amos say, yet look at the end of the Mishnah. Benoni sheba and hekdesh. We'll say, yet in the case of three, what's the halacha in the case of three? In the case of three, it's the middle one that is hekdesh. Sa'alma makdish ba'ayin ra makdish. So we'll say we have a contradiction. See, the first case of the Mishnah where I have two animals, what do we say? It's the large animal that becomes hekdesh. In the case of three, what do we say? It's the Benoni. So I'll say, from the first case, I see that whenever you're makdish something, ultimately, and you always give the nicest animal to hekdesh. Yet, from the second case of the Mishnah, it seems like when a person is makdish, you're giving the Benoni. I will say, Benoni means what? Right, the middle animal, which sounds like ba'ayin ra makdish. So I'll say, which sounds like you don't give generously to hekdesh. So which one is it? Amar Shmuel says, no. You misunderstood. We'll say in the second case of the Mishnah, where if you have three animals, it says you're makdish the Benoni. It doesn't mean you're makdish the Benoni. What does it mean? Af le Benoni. It means you're makdish also the Benoni. I was about to say that if I have three animals, two out of the three become kodesh. Which two? The best one and the Benoni one. Why? The legabe katan ayin yafo. Because I will say, here's what we know. What we know is that halacha l'mais, when a person is makdish, an animal, he is makdish at ba'ayin yafa. He gives generously. The shaila is, so when it's just two animals, generous is easy to define. It's the larger of the two. When it's three animals, it's harder to define how do you define generosity? Is it objective generosity and the best one in the flock? Or the Benoni is also considered to be quote unquote generous, legabe what? Legabe the most inferior of the three. Therefore, Benoni and best become kodesh. So also, what do you do in a case like this? Amar Rabbi Chia barav mamtin lo ad sheyumam. You wait until ultimately again the animal develops a mum. So you wait until the Benoni animal develops a mum, and then ultimately again you deconsecrate it, and you go ahead and you offer up the larger one. But say this is only if you said one of my oxen should be kodesh. About Amar Shar Bishvarai Hekdish. Rabbi say if you said an ox amongst my oxen will be kodesh, Hagadol Shabahen Hekdish. Ultimately, you're going to say Shar Bishvarai. That automatically means the best one, the largest one, I should say, becomes kodesh. Tura biturai ka'amar. Because what he's ultimately saying is an ox amongst my oxen. Ini, is that so? If a person says to his friend, I'm giving you a home within my home, right? A home amongst my homes. Ultimately, again, he gives him an aliyah. Now, we'll say aliyah means the upper apartment. The upper apartment. Actually, we'll say we're going to stop over here for today. We're going to pick up Emirat Hashem with this case. We're going to further clarify this Shar Bishvarai case Emirat Hashem tomorrow. Shkach, we'll say.